If you've ever thought that a gun would make you a better shooter, but in fact, it actually did a little bit. Go ahead and comment with what firearm that was, guys, and make sure you comment. The comment section has made me question my will to live a little bit, but you know what? We like to live life a little bit spicy. So get in there, make YouTube, make me regret keeping those comments open. Appreciate you guys so much. I do actually love you, and I've always appreciated your viewership. Now, today we're going to be talking about a very fun topic, and that is my favorite, the SCAR. More importantly, this just isn't any SCAR. You might recognize it from such great games as Counter-Strike, as the auto sniper, or the hell it's called. You might recognize it as just a SCAR, but this is actually the Mark 20, otherwise known as the SCAR 20S. It has had specific modifications to it from FN to make it a sniper variant of the SCAR. So the question is, what did they do? Did those upgrades work? Is this gun worth anything at all? Is it worth your hard-earned neat bucks? Today we will find out. Today on Grand Thumb, we talk about the SCAR 20S. But before we get into that, we of course have to thank the biggest sponsor of the channel, who is Primary Arms. If you're looking for optics at a great price, or literally anything, go and check them out. Tons of very cool things coming from Primary Arms, so make sure that you keep an eye on them. And of course, if you're looking to buy night vision or rent night vision Network, the only N word that you can say, get in there, check it out. It allows you to try things out before you actually use them. And if you're looking to get better at shooting, we recommend Dry Fire Mantis. Will turn your weapon into a dry fire machine. Go and check them out. Their products are awesome, and all ammunition was provided for by AAC. Now, with all that big stuff out of the way, let's talk about what is my relationship with FN. So FN has sent me firearms in the past to do reviews. In the case of the SCAR 20S, bought this bad boy from a dealership, actually from Gunbroker, and then it was shipped to my dealership, and I just had really wanted to do this weapon for a long time. Now, there's no exchange of money with FN. I have talked to one of their marketing reps before, but I'm not under any type of contract, no exchange of money, ammunition, or anything. We're gonna be, as we always are, completely unbiased in our approach to this firearm. But the first thing that we do have to note that this is a semi-automatic, and more importantly, this is the new variant that is in 6.5 Creedmoor. This is a heavy barrel profile. It feeds from either a 10 or 20 round magazine. Of course, you can get lowers that can use different things in SCAR mags, but we love the SCAR mags. And this thing is a bit of a beast. It is a gas piston operated weapon. There's a lot that goes into it. First things that we're gonna do is we're gonna go out to the range with a younger, slightly more handsome version of myself who has donned a persona of just being better than me, which is totally okay. Let's get to the range. Let's see how it works. We are now on the range with the one day younger and much more handsome version of myself. Today in Grand Thumb, we're gonna be talking about the Mark 20. We are on the range. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and group this thing for accuracy. We have John here with us, our resident ranger who is monotone. He's actually happy.
Did not expect you to bring me into the intro.
You're in the channel. You don't have to apologize for anything. No, that's all staying in. No. John's actually happy. Just go ahead and comment with keep your chin up, John. So we're gonna be grouping this. We're gonna be doing a 5-round group. We're using AAC 140 grain Sierra Match King. Our SD sits around 12 or so, or 10, depending on the batch, which is really excellent. We're gonna see what this gun is capable of. This is a cold hammer forged barrel. We are firing a piston gun, generally compared to a DI gun. We're gonna see less accuracy. So I'm very interested to see how it compares to other DMRs of its type. Let's see how the SCAR stacks up. Group looked really good. Probably is a smidge over an MOA, maybe a little less. Let's go check our groups. Okay, so we fired a couple groups to kind of get warmed up. So we're gonna go with the one we officially shot right here. So we have a 5-round group. We grouped at 0.78 MOA. I would say this one's pretty close, probably around, this one's at 0.85. So these seem to be pretty indicative of the groups that people are getting out of the SCAR 20S. This is what we've typically seen with good ammunition. I'm sure with hand loads it could be pushed closer to 7 from what I've seen. Compare this to like one of the best DMRs out there, like the Seekins, which is a similar price point, although a DI gun, so a little bit different in terms of reliability and stuff. And that one pushes about 0.5 or a little bit less. So this is incredible accuracy. Anything sub MOA is very good. Anything sub 0.8 is pretty phenomenal. So we're seeing very good groupings with that. So now that we've seen its performance on paper, let's go ahead and let's go practical. Going from 300 yards, we'll step it up all the way to 1200. So let's get shooting. All right, we're gonna be doing a little practical accuracy testing here. We're gonna be shooting at 300, then 500 at this, well, 550 at this particular range. So we're gonna see how quickly we can get 3 impacts consecutively without a miss. We're firing in 6.5 Creedmoor. This should be pretty short work at this distance before we start stepping it out. Really, you're not seeing a lot of the excellent ballistics from 6.5 until you're pushing about past 700. So we'll start with this to show you how good this thing runs and move from there. So that was super easy. This is no problem at this range. We're gonna step out to 550. I was holding maybe 0.3, so I was just holding at the top of the chest and I was just getting center impacts. Let's step it to 550, see what we get.
Easy.
Okay, super simple. 6.5, man. So we were dialed in the middle, which is a little high, so I'm probably not gonna dial too much more. Okay, we're now at the hill. We're overlooking onto the target that is 750 yards away. This is outside of our self-defense range. This is our typical government and Arma 3 or something like that. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take shots. We're about 5.5 mils dialed up. And based on the wind, I'm gonna guess about approximately a mil right for the wind correction because it kind of whips through that canyon right there. We're gonna go ahead and take our shots. John, you wanna go ahead and get up on that?
Yep.
Impact. Okay, so we got our 3 consecutive impacts. Pretty simple. It does make it a lot easier with the spotter. We were kind of just above and below for the first couple shots here before we got our impacts, but overall very simple. I could see my trace because of the light recoil from the Scar 20S, and the 6.5 really makes it a lot easier. You have about 30% less recoil compared to a 308. Just a little bit less barrel life, but that worked out pretty well. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna step it out to 900 and see what we get there. We're now at 900 yards. We're getting towards the edge, depending on your elevation of what the 308 can do, and depending as well as 6.5. 6.5 is about 1200 to 1400, depending on your elevation, is the point at which it goes transonic. That's typically when they become unstable, makes it harder to hit. 900, we should be able to make the impacts. We are firing 140 grain, which is a little bit slower, but we're seeing really good consistency with it. So let's see how the Scar 20S goes. Impact. Impact. Just high. Just low. Impact. You hear how long from the shot to the impact?
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting pretty good impacts at 900. So let's go ahead, let's step it out to 12. Let's see what type of performance we get. All right, we're at 1100 now. After this, we'll step it out to the end, which is 14. At our elevation right now, 3,000 feet above sea level, we're still supersonic to 14. So with this barrel, so that's gonna work out for us. 1100, you can see the targets all the way out there. If you want to pan over there for a second, Christian. What would you call that distance right there, John?
That's ridiculously far.
It's not that far, is it?
We'll be for self-defense, yeah.
This is 100% fighting a tyrannical government right here, and that's what we're about on Grand Thumb. So we're gonna go ahead and take our shots at 1100. We're dialed to about 9.5 right here. Let's see what we get.
Impact. Impact. Left side. Impact.
Okay, so 1100, absolutely no problems with the Scar 20S. I would say we step it all the way out to the very edge of the capability of 6.5. And if we're able to make good impacts on what would be considered a man-sized target, I would say this is a very combat accurate weapon. The thing I do like about the Scar that we should note is that with the gas system, the Scar remains pretty reliable throughout a whole slew of conditions. John, I mean, our good buddy over in Ukraine has used the Scar pretty extensively and has had nothing but good things to say about the types of environments that it goes through.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as he so eloquently put it when he was on the channel, it makes big wet holes in people and drops them like a sack of shit. So
this makes slightly smaller holes, but at a greater distance.
At a greater distance, there we go. So let's go ahead, let's step out 14, see how it does. So we're at 1,400 yards right here. That is about 300 yards short of a mile. Pretty impressive for such a small caliber. The 6.5 Creedmoor is very capable. So I don't know that this is specifically the most effective use of 6.5. Generally it's considered like a 1,200 and in, but let's see if it can do it. Okay, 1,400, no sandbags here, just bipod. Using my good old arm that God gave me. Not because we're against sandbagging, we're just, we're retarded. We're dialed up to 12 or 11.8.
About a target value low. Just low right. Just low right. Just low right. Just high.
How far left?
Impact.
There you go. Okay, we're at the edge of 6.5 by far, as well as I should probably be bagged up to do it. But you can see the weapon is quite effective within its typical envelope, about 1,200. Pushing out towards the transonic envelope, especially with wind like we're having out here, especially down through the canyon right there, makes it tough, but it is a very capable weapon. Let's go ahead, let's finish up checking recoil, and then we'll get back to the studio. We're gonna go ahead and show you recoil on the Scar. It has a very heavy bolt carrier group. In addition to that, there are two gas settings for normal or suppressed. With the CAT suppressor that we have on here, it's a flow-through technology, so actually the Scar's a little bit sluggish on suppressed, but it still functions pretty good. You can probably bump it up to normal and be A-okay. You're gonna see how quickly it returns to the target with 6.5. Very, very pleasant to shoot. It is a very, very pleasant recoil impulse. It's quite slow. This is very indicative of the Scar. The Scar is a very chunky sounding gun, and it feels great to shoot. You can really see trace out past 500 because you're back onto target before that round has even reached the target. Very pleasant. Let's go ahead, let's head back to the studio. Let's break it down with autism. Okay, there was a lot that went on there. The range was really cool with the Scar 20S. We have at this point over 2,000 rounds on this particular weapon. This was primarily AAC 140 grain. They're both their Sierra Match King and their boat-tailed hollow point rounds, which have performed excellent. I feel like we've shot it enough to be able to talk a lot about the wear patterns that you're typically going to see, especially when we consider the barrel life with 6.5 Creedmoor. 6.5 Creedmoor is a higher pressured round compared to 308, which is what this was originally chambered in. Because of that, the barrel life on the 6.5 Creedmoor Scar, or just any 6.5 Creedmoor gun, is about 5 to 7K depending on firing schedule. So being about 2K in, we're a good ways in to the barrel wear on this particular rifle. And at this point, as you can see from the groupings that we printed during the on the range portion, we really haven't seen any type of significant degradation in accuracy. In fact, one could say the Scar 20S is still printing phenomenally. So there's a couple things that come to a Scar that are kind of odd. Now, this video is sponsored by Ground News. So recently a Gallup poll found that overall Americans are kind of against assault weapons. But if you notice when we look at the news article, they use weird words such as assault weapons. There's no mention of the Second Amendment, which means the article might be a bit skewed. Now, that's why we have partnered with Ground News Network. We've done it before. They're gonna help you break through all that liberal media bias when it comes to news. Now, that Gallup poll is a great example of this. So what Ground News does, they get every article they can find, they show you the bias, the different narratives that these news agencies are trying to spin, and they show you how to get to the bottom of it. And on top of that, Ground News also tracks who's funding these news sites, so you have an even better picture of what's actually going on. They're also going to look at how a story is framed, or even if a story is even mentioned at all. And seeing if the liberal media doesn't report on something, well, that probably speaks volumes about that particular story. And one of the things that we love is a blind spot feature. So if the left or right isn't reporting on a certain story, they're going to pull that and show you which story it is, possibly why they're not, such as Philadelphia losing a case that would have allowed them to be more strictly able to regulate guns. Now, here's the thing, guys. We're entering a crazy era for the next 4 years, and more so than ever, you're going to see crazy biases in the media. We love Ground News Network for breaking through those, for showing where the funding is coming from, and making things easier to understand. Because, like I said before, knowledge is power. Guys, go and check out ground.news/GrandThumb. Or you can also scan the QR code that we have right here, and you can get right in there. In addition, they are giving you 50% off their Vantage plan for 6 months. That's less than $5 a month to be subscribed to Ground News. Go and check them out, guys. Link right below. Check them out. Now, with all that being said, back to the Mark 20 sniper rifle. The SCAR was a very interesting weapon program. It was the bee's knees, and then it was not the bee's knees, and then it's kind of the bee's knees once more. The SCAR has found great success in many battlefields outside of the global war on terror, more specifically within Ukraine and the Ukraine versus Russian war, from our buddies who have used them, as well as within Africa. The SCAR is a very lightweight and a very versatile platform. More importantly, for the 308 variant, it was just exceptionally good for what it was. FN coming to the table and making an accurized version to fill that DMR, to fill that sniper role, absolutely made sense. So with this particular gun, we're seeing between 0.7 and 0.8 MOA. From a gas piston gun, especially a short stroke gas piston gun, that is phenomenal. And it should be noted that even compared to an M110, that is incredible performance. Now, there are, of course, guns that will do better. A bolt gun is going to outshine a gas-operated gun. But even guns like the Seekins, which cost around the same, tend to print better being a DI weapon. DI meaning is a direct impingement, like an AR-10 type-ish pattern. When you have a piston, you have a lot more weight that are going to affect barrel harmonics and not allow the barrel to flex freely as that slug is traveling down the barrel. Because of that, you typically see worse accuracy. So FN squeezing out 0.7 is phenomenal, because that is phenomenal accuracy, even for just your regular AR-15 or something like that. So incredible from what we've seen. But with all that being said, I do also want to point out the operating mechanism. One thing that you can say about the SCAR that has always been kind of controversial is the operating mechanism, due to kind of the way it tended to beat up a lot of devices on it. From optics to laser devices like a PEC-15 like we have on this SCAR H right here. The SCAR has a tendency to break a lot of things, and there's a reason for that. So first off, being a short-stroke gas-operated weapon, we keep most of the fouling gases from getting into the operating mechanism of the weapon, more specifically the bolt carrier group and bolt. This leads to an overall cleaner weapon that tends to run for a much longer period of time. With all that being said, there are drawbacks. Now, when it comes to the SCAR, one of the ways that they designed the weapon was they have lighter springs and a heavier bolt. You can really hear that thing coming forward with some authority. And in fact, when you're shooting this, you can hear that chonky sound with the suppressor mounted, like we saw in the beginning. You can really hear the report of the suppressor and that chonky just spring and heavy bolt flying back and forward. Now, what's good about that heavy bolt is, of course, it's going to break through any of that debris. It's going to strip those rounds, no problem, out of the magazine. However, that heavy weight coming forward was very kind of not great for a lot of optics at the time, about the mid-2000s, when this guy was kind of being put into service. Now, since then, optic technology has increased quite a bit. And in fact, with most modern optics, even primary arms, we ran, not that primary arms is bad, but they are making more inexpensive optics, and those are still running fine. Modern glues, modern manufacturing seems to have ameliorated this problem on the SCAR. That being said, for things like PECs, you probably still want to have something that can withstand the force from the SCAR. Even the military uses a NAVC marked PEC that is filled to ensure that those electronics can handle the recoil from the SCAR. So there are still some considerations there. Make sure you're kind of being smart with your choices of electronics on the SCAR, because it is a lot at times. So with all that being said, we're going to now do what my favorite thing is, and of course, what is the favorite thing of the Marine Corps, being a department of the Navy, and that is going to be tip to butt. We're going to go from the tip all the way to the end and talk about what makes this so amazing. So we're going to start here at the end. Probably one of the best things that FN did when it came to the sniper variant of the SCAR, we're going to call it the Mark 20. That is a military designation. There's really no difference between the Mark 20 from the military and the SCAR 20 as you see on the civilian side, is muzzle. So previously on the SCAR, you had a very weird kind of shoulder that disallowed mounting of a lot of muzzle devices without some type of adapter. This was, of course, annoying. It wasn't that big of a deal. Now, that's been eliminated with these newer models. Now we have a 90-degree shoulder like you typically see, although I would say a tapered mount would probably be better. But we have a 90-degree shoulder that allows you to mount any type of muzzle device that we want. Right here, we have your typical cat muzzle device for mounting of a cat suppressor. So right here, we have one of the cat suppressors, which is a flow-through type design. And more on that later, but this little guy actually ended up working really, really well. So the addition of a more simple 90-degree shoulder ended up being a good thing in my opinion. And indeed, changing the muzzle device from the Surefire Pro Comp over to this right here had no impact on our accuracy. We did not see anything weird, and it was quite easy to do. The nice thing about the SCAR is removing the barrel is quite easy, as I'm screwing a few screws and pulling that guy out. It's not quick like an LMT. There is something to be said about that quick change process, but it was still relatively easy, all things being said. Now, moving back to the barrel itself, there's a lot of interesting notes that I want to make about the barrel, and more specifically, some of the choices that they made. Much like HK, I would argue that FN is also known for their excellent barrel steel. So we do have a cold hammer forged barrel on the SCAR 20S, on the Mark 20, which is interesting. Most of the time, I would expect some type of stainless steel variant on a marksman's rifle, especially a DMR. Using not just a cold hammer forged barrel, but rather using a chrome lined cold hammer forged barrel is at first puzzling. It is a very durable barrel due to the way that cold hammer forging works. You have a very dense metal. You have a metal that can withstand a lot of heat and is typically used in machine guns. The reason that stainless steel is typically used is you are able to get more accuracy out of it. But of course, the barrel life is going to be less. I would surmise to say, being a military type rifle, FN wanted to balance the ability of it to hold and shoot more rounds and keep that good accuracy with a cold hammer forged with chrome lining versus going with the stainless. In any case, despite all my reservations about the use of a cold hammer forged barrel, man, this thing really does print excellently. And one thing that I'm likely going to do in the very near future here is I'm going to cut the 20, this is a 20-inch barrel, down to a 16. The reason for this is 6.5 Creedmoor does extremely well out of short barrels, 14.5 to 16, and you get roughly the ballistics of a 20-inch or longer 308. Now, in the typical application of a DMR, most of your shots being under 1,000 or about 800 to 1,000, somewhere right around there, it does make sense to not really need to have the ability to push further, or that's going to be more taken care of by something like a 338 Lapua or 50 cal or something like those, or being an urban environment, having more of an urban sniper role. You see this being heavily investigated by the military with the use of the MRGG series, where the military is trying to select their next DMR type rifle, where most of them are running at 14.5 with 6.5 Creedmoor. So that's likely what I'll do to this guy. That's kind of an aside there, but I think it's kind of a cool thing, especially because it will just look bitchin' as hell when it's cut right down with the suppressor. Just money. Barrel excellent, muzzle device excellent. Moving back, we're just seeing phenomenal accuracy, and more importantly, we're seeing great reliability. So when it comes to the gas system right here, the gas system being a short-stroke gas-operated system, probably one of the best things about it is how easy it is to switch the position of your gas system. Now, when it comes to the gas system, we do have an adjustable gas system. I think probably the best thing that FN did was make this specifically for shooting suppressors. So on the older SCAR, you had basically a normal and an adverse position. So you either shot it normally gassed, and with a suppressor on there, it was massively overgassed, or you put it to the overgas mode to blow through mud and debris, and well, then having a suppressor on that is really going to beat the system up. On the Mark 20, due to the way it was going to be used, they went with a normal gas setting at the 12 o'clock, and at the 10 o'clock, which it's switched to right now, is a suppressed setting. Very, very puzzlingly, just like the original SCAR H, the Mark 20, despite being easily mounted with a suppressor, despite having a suppressor setting, FN still does say that when you mount a suppressor, it does void the warranty, which is the same problem we ran into with the SCAR. So that's a little bit weird. I understand other manufacturers do that as well. I just feel like in 2024, suppressors are just kind of just something everybody has. So it's a little weird just to say you're voiding your warranty. I understand you got to cover your butt, and from everything that I understand, FN has been covering the warranty on weapons with suppressor problems. Nonetheless, I just kind of like to see it in writing. But that's me personally. Now, moving back from there, let's talk a little bit about the extended rail and some of the things that they did to make this even better. Now, compared to our normal SCAR H, we do have an extended rail right here. So, well, technically a receiver because it comes all the way forward. But you can see it's extended. It's open up right here as far as weight. There's no operating mechanism beyond the gas changing position compared to the original Scar. Now, even with an extended rail, this gas piston is kind of just open to the elements right there. So this isn't abnormal. Now, this is a very rigid system. We've mounted everything from night vision to thermal to PEX to what have you on this with no loss of zero throughout everything that we've done. This has been a very, very stable platform, and I think that this is an excellent upgrade. First, what you used to have to do, which was add a PMM rail or some other type of rail out there to get that extended all the way out there, or PWS or what have you. And I think this is much better compared to having to add like an extended rail for PMM or one of those other companies that make extended rails. Now, going back from there, we get to some of the things that they've done. So specifically, we have enhanced mounting for the barrel. It's been extended. This allows for a more rigid mounting because not only do we have more barrel, but we also have a heavier barrel. This is a heavy profile barrel. That's compared to the tapered barrel you saw with the 308 version. This is heavy all the way down. This helps it resist heat. Now, there's a lot of talk about what is the real effect of heat on accuracy, but overall I find this to be a good thing, and the ability of the weapon to withstand that heat, to dissipate it more easily, and to just work better. So we have an enhanced mounting, which makes for a much more accurate system. And indeed, everything that we've seen, this weapon has been an absolute beast when it comes to not just accuracy, but consistency in accuracy, its ability to hold those groups over long periods of time. So it's something that I can very much so appreciate. Now, going back from there, we do have a non-reciprocating charging handle on this particular model. So this is wonderful because obviously if you guys have been shooting Scars, you've probably got your thumb behind there and it fires and it reciprocates and it hurts. That was a military kind of thing that they needed to do. Obviously, as those contracts have changed, they've been able to go to the non-reciprocating model, which in my mind both lessens recoil and is just a better overall thing. So we have the non-reciprocating version right here. And moving down, we do have our Scar Mag. So I'm a big fan of the Scar Mag. I find it to be ergonomic, I find it to be lightweight, and I find it to be extremely strong. Some people do add a lower that converts it over to SR25 mags. That's fine. I just like the Scar Mags. Do what's going to work for you. Don't let me tell you what to do. Now, when we go over to the controls right here, the controls on the Scar have always been wonderful. We have your typical bolt release. So when you fire last round, walks back, new mag in, boom. You're back into the fight. We have a magazine release, both left and right side. Not a bolt release though. And more importantly, we have both a left and right side safety. Now the safety throw is about 45 degrees, maybe a little bit more than that. And it's very easy to actuate. And I love it on the right side because when I'm shooting long range, a lot of the time I like to run thumb same side just to kind of eliminate a lot of those hand movements when you're shooting extreme long range, such as firing unsupported at 1,400 yards. That's a lot. And that brings us to the trigger. It's always been frustrating to me when you get these really nice DMRs and you just get a terrible trigger. It makes no sense. Now, FN has used the Geissele Super Scar trigger, which is, in my opinion, the best Scar trigger imaginable. So we're going to do what we always do. We're going to go ahead. We're going to ghost that trigger together. So put it into fire right here. Put your finger right over mine. A little Unchained Melody right here. Okay, we have a little bit of play into our 2-stage trigger, which I prefer for long range. We have like a 3-pound let off. Feeling back off that reset. Ooh, 3 millimeters maybe. Back into like a 3-pound pull. That is a very nice trigger. And I can really appreciate having that on a DMR that just is going to be better for accuracy. Obviously, you can work through a terrible trigger. Do we want to? No. That is wonderful right there. The grip is an overmolded grip. I have no problem with it. Some people don't like it. For long range shooting, it works fine for me. It's also easily changeable, so there's no problem there. Now, moving up, I'll talk a little bit about the optic that we're using. We are using a Nightforce ATACR as a 4-20, and this thing is wonderful. We love the Nightforce optics. This one is, of course, expensive. However, it allows me to use the full kind of capacity of the rifle. We shot it out to about 1,100, no problem. Only really struggled at 14, which is really at the very outside range of what the 6.5 Creedmoor is capable of shooting. Now, as far as sling mounting is concerned, there are multiple points. We have our typical FN hooks, or if you want to do paracord on that. So we have left and right side up here. And then of course, at the rear, we have 2 different locations as well as a location at the top right of the back. Now, moving back to the buttstock, a lot of people have been a huge fan of the buttstock, and that's me included. A lot of very good things were done to make this particular precision stock. Probably the best part about it is on-the-fly adjustments that are quite quick. So I'm gonna rotate that around so you can see the adjustments right here. So first thing is our comb can be changed. We can raise that up or lower that. So get the appropriate height depending on the height of your optic. Put that back down to where it was. Locks in place, very stable overall. And then of course, for your adjustable length of pole, very easy to do. In addition, on the bottom, we have our Picatinny, so we can mount a monopod or whatever accoutrement you want. Maybe you want them all facing back, I don't know. But this all makes to add for a really good platform. Now, more importantly, 6.5 Creedmoor is a very wonderful round. 30% less recoil than .308, better ballistics at range, just a wonderful round. Obviously, less barrel life. Typically, with your SCAR, you have around 15-ish K on .308. So there's always an argument that you're gonna have a much more barrel life with a .308 compared to the 6.5. I would argue that due to the ability to change barrels easily, that this isn't really that big of a deal if you're shooting about 7K rounds of 6.5. You spent quite a bit of money, and you can probably have the money to the deep pockets to buy yourself another barrel right there. Now, in addition to that, when this is set to the suppress setting with the CAT suppressor that we have right here, which is flow-through design, this is actually a teeny bit under-gassed. So this is actually made for a more traditional baffle design, which I understand. So understand you might actually be better served being in a normal position with one of these suppressors, like a flow-through type design, like a Huxworks or something like that. It did run fine about 99% of the time. I would say in a serious situation, kick that guy over to normal and you're gonna be fine. The recoil was extremely mild with this suppressor mounted. Shots beyond 500, even at like 300, I could watch trace of the round. I can in fact even watch the round as the sun glinted off of it. And then at those longer ranges, I could watch the trace of the round rise and fall. This is a very light recoiling gun. You want to see that in a DMR for the ability to make those follow-up shots after you see either trace or you see that impact near the target or just off, or if you get an impact, you want to follow up to make sure that they never get up and they go in the 9.8, the big 9.8 box forever, then yeah, that's going to work. Overall, I've been very impressed with the SCAR. We do have an 11-ish pound rifle, a little bit more once loaded up, a lot more. It is heavy, however, it is a very reliable rifle, and due to all the combat proven kind of conflicts that we've seen the SCAR in at this point, I'm very inclined to believe that the SCAR is a wonderful choice when it comes to a combat gun. In addition to that, the 6.5 makes this a really good choice. The barrel profile, everything together makes this absolutely wonderful. I don't have any qualms in saying buy the SCAR 20S if you're looking for a great out-of-the-box DMR/sniper system that's going to fit your needs for about $1,200 and in. I think it's very hard to beat this in terms of reliability. Now, I will say the Seekins SP10M, which we have quite a few, we have like 3 of them, those are kind of our go-to. Those absolutely rock. I don't believe that they beat these reliability-wise, but they certainly beat them in accuracy and consistency. So, with all this being said, guys, you can't go wrong with the SCAR 20S, the Mark 20. It is a wonderful rifle, and I think the ability to swap barrels easily, to cut it down, to make more of an MRGG type design, this is wonderful. We can't recommend this enough. Go out there, buy it. I understand it is a lot of money. If that's a concern, I would definitely go for something like the PSA Saberline. They make some wonderful products. Go and check it out, guys. We thank you so much for watching. As always, I'd be more scared of a guy with a PSA AR-10 who trains every day versus a guy with this who never trains. Get out there, train. We love you guys. Final advice for you guys could be a little bit of life advice. If there's one thing I could say, it's that your health choices early in your life will impact your health later in life. Make those good life choices now, because although it might not feel like it now, you might have kids, you might have grandchildren later on that you absolutely want to live for, and you don't want to put yourself in a position where you can't be there in their lives because of your poor health decisions. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We got nothing else for you. Stay tuned for later. And it's partially frozen in place. Of course. Come on, we'll do it. We'll do it. Now, when it comes to get your head in the game, Mike. Just me insulting myself. NBD. God is great. Okay, here we go.